welcome back to another episode of the Film Nerd Podcast. I'm Vince, and tonight, not only am I joined by two first-time guests, but they're very special guests, very special episode because I have a collab here with another podcast. I got Sleepers Media on, Carter Elliott, Greg Waddell. Been watching these guys for, I think, the better half of this year. You guys got pretty big back in January, February, I think. And I've been watching pretty much ever since I found it. I've been watching you guys. How you doing?
Doing great, man. First of all, appreciate the love. You've been texting us. I know you've been watching our episodes because you bring up anything that we say in the episode is like a little inside joke. You always hit me up about it. So we appreciate the support. Likewise, I am a fan of the Film Nerd Podcast. I've been watching everything you've been doing this year. You're growing it like crazy. So it's a pleasure being here. And I even dragged Carter with me. How about that?
Yeah, I'm going to second everything Greg says. Vince, I know you've been showing a lot of love. Whenever we do questions for our pod, I know that we're getting a question from Vince. It's probably going to be the best question, too. So I appreciate that intro on the love for sure.
I tried to come up with some good ones. Well, I was excited. You guys had on Brandon Wood, Kenny Goins. I know that you've been okay. So you pronounced it. We got to get this right. You said Goins. Is it Goins or is it Goins?
I think it's Goins.
Is it? I've never gotten like a clear cut Goins or Goins. I don't know.
Damn it, we had our opportunity to ask that. And
I don't even know. You guys said Goins. I'm like, oh wait, is it Goins or is it Goins?
We probably botched it. It wouldn't be the Sleepers if we didn't mess up a pronunciation.
Hey man, he didn't say anything. If he didn't say anything, I don't think he cares. So,
very true.
But I was excited when you guys got him on because, and I know Carter's a big Spartan dog, so you got to get some more Spartans on there. I think you said you might have eclipsed Michigan Wolverines now with all the Spartan dogs.
We're making moves.
I like it.
That'll change soon. Don't worry.
So we're going to talk about two movies. We're going to get into Space Jam, the original, obviously 1996, and then a couple weeks ago we got Space Jam 2 or Space Jam. I think the alternate title is A New Legacy, whatever. But we're going to get into those two movies here. But before we get into them, I want to talk about because we're all. Yeah, I believe we're all 90s. Because Carter, what year were you born?
93.
You're 93. I think, Greg, are you 93?
93.
I'm 92. We're all early 90s babies here. So Space Jam, I mean, as I just said to these guys before we start, I feel like is quintessential 90s. And not only just because it's such a popular 90s movie, but because it combined so many different things from the 90s and even pre-90s. Obviously, Looney Tunes is very old, but just so many different things that just all wrapped up into one weird movie. So I don't care who goes first. Carter, if you want to kick us off, when was the last time you watched the original Space Jam and what kind of memories, or do you have any like nostalgia for it? Was it like a big movie going thing as a kid or?
Oh yeah. So the original Space Jam, I actually just rewatched it because I was hopping on this pod. So I did rewatch it this past weekend, but I think before that, the last time I saw it was probably a couple months. I mean, I'll watch it when it comes on TV, you know. Like
you had watched, even though you just rewatched it, you had actually not watched it that long ago?
Oh, yeah, no, it wasn't that long ago for me. Like, whenever it comes on TV and, like, I'm not really doing anything, I'll definitely throw it on the TV because, like, it's just classic. Like, everything about my childhood is, like, Space Jam, from the shoes to, you know, the hoop to the music in that movie, which I want to get into later for sure because the soundtracks on the movie is huge.
That's a bullet point. I got a bullet point. Absolutely.
I'm very glad that's a bullet point. But yeah, so I watched that again this past weekend, and I also watched Space Jam 2 directly after.
Oh, you went back to back.
I did back to back. So
nice.
I did put them right side by side, so I'm ready.
Big cinema.
How about you, Greg? How about you?
I would say it was a decent sized chunk of my childhood growing up as a basketball fan. I mean, in general, I would say a casual moviegoer. I like movies. I'm by no means an expert. I don't know why you invited us on your podcast, but I'll do my best to fill in. But I probably watched Space Jam like 10 plus times growing up, but it had been a long time, probably since college that I'd seen it. So I did rewatch it. I actually just finished the original about 20 minutes prior to this episode, so it's extremely fresh. And Carter, you mentioned that Space Jam, the original, was such a big part of your life growing up. I'd like to just acknowledge the fact that you also had your talent sucked out of you at a certain point in your life. So I just throw it out there.
You can't have talent sucked out of you if you never had it in the first place. So,
don't be so humble,
man.
Carter.
You just ripped him down and he just ripped himself down right after that. Unbelievable.
You got to keep him humble.
I spent the last podcast episode we had ripping him apart for his stuff, so I'll accept that.
Oh, when we're done recording, I gotta ask you about that before I forget, because that was unbelievable. You're talking about the Michigan State bullshit.
Yeah,
I gotta ask him about that because that's crazy.
It's terrible.
So I gotta be honest with you guys. I watched Space Jam as a kid. I remember enjoying it. I remember it being a part of my childhood. But my favorite sports movie as a kid was Sandlot. It was Sandlot. I watched Sandlot, I don't even know, dozens of times. And Remember the Titans, I think, is barely a 90s movie. It's either 98 or 99. Obviously, that was a big 90s sports movie. But I wasn't a big basketball guy as a little kid. And I wasn't really into the NBA. So, like, I didn't have that, I don't know, that reverence for Michael Jordan that a lot of kids had in the 90s, because I didn't watch the NBA. So I don't remember it being like, oh my God, Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls. Because I know for a lot of people it was like he was everywhere. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I just watched The Last Dance back in the fall, that docuseries on him that was on ESPN. It's on Netflix now. But watching that, it is crazy to go back and like relive the 90s and like worldwide, that phenomenon of he was like the biggest person on the earth. It was like Michael Jackson and him. Like everyone knew who those guys were. And looking back on it, I don't really remember having quite as fond a love for it as some people do, but I remember enjoying it. I remember thinking it was a fun movie as a kid and really liking it. Now as an adult, so this is the big, and I know Carter, it sounds like, he's watched it quite a few times. I don't think I had watched this movie when I watched it 2 nights ago. It probably was the first time I'd revisited it since at least high school. I don't think I had seen, like, the whole thing. Like Carter said, it's always on TV. I mean, you can catch this movie on a lot of different movie channels. And I'd probably seen bits and pieces, or I'd watched stuff online, like people talking about the movie or clips and stuff. But like from start to finish, I don't think, at least since high school, maybe even before that. But before I go, Carter, how about you? I mean, obviously you said you're kind of fresh. What do you think of it as an adult?
It's definitely different. I think like as a kid, you can't really process like films like that. So like at the time I was just like, oh my God, this is Michael Jordan. Like the Space Jam 11 Jordans are my favorite, probably top 5 shoe for me of all time. Like that was an iconic shoe. It was really prevalent in the movie. So like I love just watching the basketball, and then like you have cartoons too. So like it's just my two worlds colliding in like a movie. But then of course when I'm older watching it, the nostalgia is great, but at the same time I'm like what's really happening here? Like
we're gonna get into that. We're gonna break. I want to break down this movie.
I mean, it was still good because the nostalgia part, just all that comes back to me. But the fact of actually looking at it as a movie, and it was okay.
What do you got, Greg?
So I don't know if we want to do comparisons between Space Jam 2 and 1 until the end, but like a lot of my views.
I do want to compare some things. We'll break down the original a bit, kind of talk about some specifics as we view it as an adult, but then I do want to compare some things.
Okay.
Because there's some glaring differences.
A lot of my notes on the original Space Jam are viewed through a lens of comparing it to the new one. Okay. And most of them are in a positive light. I'll hint at that. But
positive on the side of the original.
On the side of the original, yes.
I'd be right there.
We can get more into that. I don't know. I think I followed the plot pretty well of the original, and I thought there was actually a story that made sense. And even if it was a little bit ridiculous, and
made sense. We got to put some quotations on there, but
like there's a clear antagonist, and there's a clear reason why the antagonist is doing these things, and it's like, okay, I get it, and I like how there's a bunch of other players. Chuck was in there, and Muggsy Bogues.
Oh yeah,
and all that, and
I forgot Chuck was in. I forgot he was in it. When I'm like, oh man, I forgot Charles Barkley's in this.
Right? Yeah, and I don't know. Michael, I thought was pretty solid as an actor. I feel like the big thing that jumped out to me was it seemed like if there was any purpose of Space Jam other than just like being an entertaining childhood movie for kids, it seemed like it was almost trying to humanize Michael Jordan a little bit, because especially when watching The Last Dance, like he's this ruthless competitor that will win at all costs. and will like literally play a game of quarters with the guy in the locker room, the security guys. Like
that sequence is crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
He's nuts. But in Space Jam, like Michael Jordan's just talking to the Looney Tunes like, guys, can't we just have fun? Like that is so not Michael Jordan from everything I know about Michael Jordan. And that jumped out at me on the rewatch as something I never noticed originally, of like, they're really doing a little, I don't want to call it fan service, but like they're humanizing Michael Jordan quite a bit here.
They're doing damage control on Michael Jordan because he was an alcoholic, a gambler, and
the baseball
sometimes
stuff.
a bad father.
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up, Carter, because this movie, you got to remember. So with that's a great transition segue just to get into breaking down this movie. So obviously, Space Jam came out in 1996, so this was kind of like, he'd won 3 championships, and I'm not super well versed on the specific, the specificities of like his timeline and when things were going on. But this was right after the time. His father had just been murdered, right? Wasn't it 94 or 95 when his father was murdered? He had the whole thing with the gambling stuff, obviously the stunt with the baseball thing. So I'm glad you said that's a really interesting observation, Greg, because I do think I would imagine from Michael's perspective, that would be exactly why he took on this project, is to paint himself in a more positive light. And yeah, on rewatch, it's a very lighthearted performance from him. And then we'll get into it with LeBron, but that's one of the big differences between this movie is LeBron is very serious. He's very self-serious, whereas Michael is super lighthearted, kind of fun and easygoing. And that's kind of, as we get into the second one a little bit later, that's kind of the big difference between these two movies in general. But yeah, this movie, and we also should, before we really get into it, we got to talk about this movie cost $80 million in 1996. Do you guys know what that would be in 2021? I looked it up.
You got to tell me.
This would be just shy of $150 million movie. This is an expensive movie. I think the new one was around $200 million movie. And it still made $250 million. This was a really popular movie. Like this, everyone saw this movie. If you were a kid, you saw this movie. Like it was a big deal to go and see. I remember how Space Jam was just like all the rage. So as we get into it, we can break down some individual things here. But I think we should also bring up first, we got to talk about the music. Carter already brought it up, but you hear the movie Space Jam, and I just hear that theme song in my head. Come on and jam. That song comes like immediately. Oh my God.
Like the minute I got done watching Space Jam 2, I like looked up the soundtrack because as I was watching it, I'm like, this music is not good. Like the music in Space Jam 2 is just straight up not good. Like for whatever track and albums are on that. And then you go back to Space Jam 1 and you got Fly Like an Eagle, I Believe I Can Fly, Hit 'em High. Like there are so many classic songs.
They play, I Believe I Can Fly twice.
Yes, like Fly Like an Eagle. Like It's just like iconic scenes of Michael Jordan just doing slow-mo, working in the gym. Like those are iconic songs. And there's not one iconic song on Space Jam 2.
And it starts with that opening. I mean, if we want to really just break the movie down here, the opening of that movie, that's what I always remember as a kid, is for some reason, that is like stuck in my memory over the last 25 years this movie came out, is the opening of him in 1973, playing basketball, and his dad comes out at midnight. And he, as a kid, for some reason, I thought that he did slam dunk it. On rewatch, I'm like, does he dunk this? I'm like, does he actually dunk it? For some reason, as a kid, I think I had it in my head that they showed him, or I just assumed that he dunked it at like, I don't know, what was he supposed to be, 10 years old or whatever he was, 12 years old. I just assumed he dunked it. Then I was like, oh, they cut away before he goes to jump up. And as an adult, I can only imagine parents taking their kids to see this, like seeing that scene. You had to have laughed out loud. You got to laugh out loud because it's like that kid's not dunking it. Like, are they trying to imply that he's going to jump up and dunk the basketball? But as a kid, you love that shit. I mean, you eat that up because it's like, it's that, you're projecting yourself on him. You want to be like that. And then I love, like you talked about, Greg, humanize him. Obviously, it goes into kind of all of his, kind of his accolades and accomplishments at that point over the opening sequence. And they try to recreate that. We'll talk about Space Jam 2 in a little bit here, but they try to recreate that with LeBron. But as the movie gets going and they get into the animation, that's the other thing that sticks out to me. What did you guys think about the animation on rewatch? Obviously, as a kid, you don't really think about that, especially in 1996. What's your frame of reference for, live action combined with animation? Obviously, now you see it all the time. Everything's green screen. All the Marvel movies, that's all technically animation. So now it's so seamless. But you watch this movie where they have like the 2D Looney Tunes animation comes in. What do you guys think on rewatch? The style there.
I thought it stood up okay. Like, I was expecting it to be worse upon rewatch than it was. It was by no means something that I think should win awards, but like, I watched it without feeling like I was watching something from the 90s. I felt like it was just a movie that was made a while ago, and it wasn't distracting to me. What was a little distracting to me just after, and I wish I would have watched them in reverse order, but after watching 2 first and then going back to the original, there was no animated MJ. And that stood out to me compared to the animated LeBron that we see in the second one.
We'll get to that when we get to the second one, because that was something I wrote down and I have some thoughts on it. But how about you, Car? What'd you think?
Yeah, I honestly thought, kind of same thing as Greg. It held up pretty well. Like, I compared it to, and again, I'm a casual movie watcher, but like, if I watch some basketball highlights from the 90s, I'm able to tell. Like, it's almost unwatchable. Like, sometimes
the grainy quality.
Yeah, grainy, like pixelated. And I was like, this really isn't that, like, back in whenever it was made, like, this had to be like high tech, like top of the line type shit, because it was pretty good. It was pretty nice.
Well, and I don't know if you guys know this, but do you know that, like, critically, this movie was really poorly received upon release? Like, the big thing right now, the internet meme, is that this movie has like only 7 or 8% more on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever than the new one, and Michael's like beaming that he beat LeBron on something else. Like, that was the meme I was seeing going around. But this movie was actually not very well received. Famously, Siskel and Ebert, 2 of the most famous film critics ever, Roger Ebert, actually really loved this movie. He gave it like a 3.5 out of 4 stars and was very positive on it. And one of the big things he said was the animation, because the animation was kind of groundbreaking at the time. Who Framed Roger Rabbit was another movie a few years before that did the live action and the 2D in the same movie, but there weren't a ton of movies that had done this, especially to be all animation. Because, like, I don't know if you guys know Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, it's live action with just animated characters for most of the movie, whereas this, it's like the background is all animated, and then you have MJ in the animated environment, which is a bit different than any movie had really done. The only thing that gets me, and it's so creepy, and you gotta laugh as an adult, there's more than 2, but the 2 that always stand out to me is when MJ gets crinkled up into the ball and dribbled around by the Monstars. Is so creepy. As a kid, I don't know as a kid if it terrified me or not, but it's such a creepy moment. And then when Newman, or Wayne Knight, but everyone knows him as Newman from Seinfeld, gets smashed, and they both like blow him back up, and he's floating around and like has gas coming out of him as he's flying around the arena. Those were like early attempts at like CGI, and they're really creepy. Like, now,
so I want to jump in off of, I think, the first thing you just said. Part of what made this movie stand up to me, and I think was part of what was cool to kids growing up, is like the Monstars were either terrifying or sweet. Like, as an enemy side of things, like, I put some respect on the Monstars name from the original Space Jam. And so, like, when they're doing shit like that, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast or not, but it's like, you're kind of taking them seriously because they're a legitimate threat, either in the basketball world or just in the movie itself. Like, everyone, there's like the culture of you wear like a Monstars jersey or you get Monstars gear. And that holds up over time to me, which I think is part of what lifts the movie and carries it throughout, is like, if they're the evil force, they're a pretty entertaining evil force.
They're super intimidating.
Yeah, no, and it goes back to the music. Like, I literally remember a scene from the movie with the Monstars, and that Hit 'em High was on, and they're running into the gym, and they start hooping with their powers, and I'm like, oh shit, like these boys are bad. Like, this is kind of dope. Like, that type of thing is fire.
How do we feel about the fact that like Rick Smits was a Monstar? Like, that stood out to me on rewatch. Like, it's Rick Smits, really?
So we talking about like Monstars versus Goon Squad, like the matchup problems they would have or something?
Maybe. I don't know.
Hey,
I
put
just
some respect on Rich Smith's name. All right.
Like Chuck and Patrick Ewing, that's dope. And I guess like LJ Muggsy, okay, Muggsy's an entertaining looking dude, but like Rick Smits is the monster.
I'd be curious to know why they picked though. I would be curious. I haven't really looked into like how they got those guys, but I'd be wondering. I would be curious if they like reached out to a bunch of guys, like some of the big names, and anyone they could get, they got.
They probably reached out to everybody, and those were the only 5 players that wanted to be with Michael Jordan or work with him. Honestly,
hey, a way better subplot would have been if Scottie Pippen was the leader of the Monstars and was trying to eternally take down MJ.
Yes.
Hey man, they were trying to get that they weren't trying to get that in depth with though. They were just trying to make a kids movie at the end of the day, I think. No, but speaking of which, that's a good segue into the cast. I mean, obviously, and we'll get into the new one too, but they have so many cameos in this original one. I think one of the standouts is Larry Bird and Bill Murray when they're golfing. As an adult, that entire golf sequence is absolutely hilarious, and it all culminates in the punchline of them just leaving Michael Jordan. Like they watched him get sucked down a hole, and I love Bill Murray's reaction. Is like he says, "Get that thing away from me." He's got the camera. He's like, "What did you do to him?" And then him and Larry are like just like talking business, and they just take off in the golf cart. They just left Michael down in this hole. Who knows what happened to him? He's just missing. That to me was one of the funniest in terms of like adult humor. One of the funniest parts in the movie. But then you got obviously Wayne Knight plays his publicist, who obviously again quintessential '90s. Seinfeld was like the biggest sitcom in the '90s, and you have one of the most popular characters from the show. Then you have Danny DeVito voices the lead of the Monstars, the like their boss or whatever.
Boss guy,
the one that looks like Danny DeVito.
He kind of does.
Yeah,
he's just the short, stocky, like crappy hair, smoking cigars. His character, dude, is pretty creepy for a kids movie. There's the scene where he's smoking early on, and he just drools like green slime all over the little before they become the Monstars, his little minions. But I love that's one thing that I really like about this movie, that when we get into the second one here, this movie doesn't really give a shit in terms of like crossing the line. There's a lot of sexual innuendos in this movie too.
That movie, that there was a certain part in it that I still remember scared me, was when I think he was bringing up the point that if Michael loses, he's gonna have to play one-on-one against kids as he's chained up.
Oh my god, yeah!
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is not okay.
Bugs
like
Bunny.
Chaining up a black man and having him just play. Like, what is going on? This
Dude,
is all right.
Bugs Bunny at one point goes, "You can't just make us slaves." Remember, he like talks about them being slave. I'm like, as a kid, I mean, you're stupid. As kids, you're stupid. But like as an adult, I'm like, what? How is this in this movie? They're like talking about slavery and shit. I'm like, what is going on?
So on that note of things that like over time didn't hit the way they did, I think there's a moment.
Honestly, now I think it's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious.
This one is not hilarious. This might get a little too deep, Vince. I apologize, but there's a moment where right after Chuck and Patrick Ewing get their talents taken, and like it goes to the montage of people watching this happen around the league.
I think
NBA players are scared, and it's like the team in the hallway that's like, "Coach, we're not playing. We're not getting dressed." And they're like, "Yeah, you are. Like, just go get dressed in the hallway." And they have like the masks on because they're terrified their stuff's going to go away. All I could think about is COVID.
Yeah.
Like, and just the concept of like how NBA players have been put on this pedestal and forced to, in the middle of a pandemic, like almost dance for society's entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's wild. Like, that's an animated, stupid thing that like now I watch back, it's like, oh my God, like what Giannis Antetokounmpo just had to do in a pandemic is wild to me.
First of all, great pronunciation. That was fantastic. And second, going off of that, they take it further. There's like a whole montage. It's like in the middle of the movie where they come back to the guys who are their power take, and they're like in therapy, they're in the hospital, they're going to the doctor. As a kid, you're probably checked out during that scene because the Looney Tunes are gone and Michael Jordan's gone, so you're probably checked out. But like as an adult, I'm watching like, this is sad. Like this is depressing. Like these guys are like really trying to figure out like it's like an existential like crisis they're all having.
Right.
Like, what do I do?
Lose their basketball players and they absolutely just are done as human beings.
Yeah.
Like
Naomi Osaka. What am I if I'm not a tennis player? Like that Muggsy Bogues didn't know what he was in Space Jam.
Who would have thought you have an existential crisis from NBA players in the middle of the original Space Jam? But here we are talking about it. Yeah, it's that's to me the biggest thing on rewatch with the original that I enjoyed the most is just how much, again, this movie just does not give a shit. This movie crosses some lines. We kind of went off on a different thing there, but did you guys notice all the sexual innuendos in this movie? Especially with Lola, the big ones with Lola Bunny.
Lola Bunny.
Bugs, they like metaphorically have him get an erection. Yeah. He like goes hard and falls on the ground. It's like his whole body's hard. Like, come on, you can't tell me the animators and the direct, like the people making this movie, didn't know what they were doing.
Cart, watch yourself here. You're an engaged man. You don't need to get into trouble here.
Hey, young Carter definitely used to take a little extra peek at Lola Bunny. She was that.
It's been said, it's been rumored that Lola Bunny helped start furry fandom for a lot of 90s kids. I read online that apparently Lola Bunny was a big part of a lot of our generation in terms of, sexual development. But it's kind of crazy that they slipped some of those things in this movie. On top of it, we see Daffy Duck kiss his own butt. He puts the Warner Brothers sticker on his butt and turns around and kisses his own butt. There's a scene where they pants a Monstars in the middle of the game and you see his whole ass. Like, the animators had to make that. Like, they're the ones doing this. On rewatch, that shit had me dying. I was like, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is in a kid's movie, but 90s and 80s movies did not care. Anyone who's a big fan of the Goonies or Gremlins, I mean, those are supposed to be kids movies, but I don't know. Back then they had a different expectations for what people could go see in the movie with their kids. But as an adult, I was dying laughing. I thought it was great. So we can kind of segue here into a couple other things. There's a few other things I wanted to kind of talk about. I also thought a big part of this movie that made me laugh was the dialogue. So we'll get into the second one a little bit here, but the dialogue in this movie, it's not good. It's not good. But it like borders that so bad it's good. Like, there's sequences, and a lot of it has to do with Michael Jordan. Like, Greg, you said he was a pretty good actor. I think he's okay for being an NBA player who's never really acted, but there's a lot of scenes that I about peed my pants laughing when he first gets to the Toon World or Looney Tunes World or whatever it is, and the camera zooms around, he goes, okay, what's going on here? Like, you can tell that he's just in a green screen room and he doesn't really have anything to act to. So he's just like, okay, what's going on here?
I felt like a lot of times in the first one, there was a lot of camera shots of Jordan just like making facial expressions. He didn't really have any lines. He's just kind of like, yeah.
Well, you gotta think he's in like a green room. He has nothing to act to.
It wasn't, and also I must say, LeBron is a way better actor than Michael Jordan, and that's not just.
We'll get into that. Well, I do have some comments on that.
If you haven't seen Trainwreck, my dog Bron was good in that. Okay?
He was great in Trainwreck.
I wrote that in my notes. I did write that in my notes. I literally wrote down.
Let's make that known. This isn't, if everyone's bringing up that the Jordan better than Bron thing, and they're bringing up the acting thing. Bron's acting circles around MJ.
We'll get to that.
LeBron was great in Trainwreck, but Space Jam 2 was a train wreck, and he was a part of that.
Boo! I should throw a tomato at you for that. That was a terrible little thing you just tried to do there.
We'll get there in just a second. I want to talk about a few more things on Space Jam, but we are going to dive in. That's one of the first things I have actually in between. I literally wrote down MJ versus LeBron. Acting ? Is between the two movies. So we are going to talk about that in just a second here. So you said earlier, Greg, that you thought this movie makes sense. One of the reasons that I love this movie is it does not make any fucking sense. But what, what helps it? It's only 80 minutes. When the credits roll, I think it's 80. The whole movie is like 87 minutes, but when the credits starts, like 80. It's such a short, like fast-paced movie. You don't really have time to stop and think about anything that they're throwing at you. But like every scene I could probably stop and go, what? Like the scene, let's go back to the golf scene. Why is Bugs Bunny, how is he using a magnet to control a golf ball? Kids don't care. Obviously they don't care. It's not possible. but who cares? Right? What is going on with, like, why are the Looney Tunes playing a basketball? Like, why basketball? I know, again, it's a kid's movie. Who gives a shit? But as an adult watching it, this is things that, like, I can't help but keep popping into my head. Why a game of basketball? Right?
Well,
why are they playing?
Because Jordan sucks at baseball?
No, but just in general, just like the whole premise of the movie on rewatch cracks me up, because it's like, why are they playing a game of basketball for their lives? Obviously, there's an answer. Obviously, there's an answer, because there wouldn't be a movie with MJ and Space Jam and all that. But it's just funny rewatching as an adult, kind of like breaking down the narrative of the movie. And again, it's for kids. I get it, but I can't help think about it as I'm watching it. I'm like, this is so stupid, but I love that they don't care. They don't care. They just breeze by everything from scene to scene without really explaining much, which I think helps this movie. Before we get into the second one, it hurts the second movie. This movie, they don't explain anything. They almost never do. A great scene, how they, like, it's kind of meta, is when Bill Murray shows up during the basketball game. They go, "How did you get here?" And he goes, "I don't know. I know a producer at the studio or something." And again, as a kid, you wouldn't have any idea what he's talking about. You just, oh, okay. But as an adult, I'm like, they don't give a shit. Like, they really don't care. Bill Murray's in the movie. He's one of the biggest celebrities of, like, the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Big comedian. He's just in the movie. We don't have to explain why. He just showed up to the basketball game. But I just love that they don't care. It makes the movie so much more enjoyable.
Right. So I want to push back on this, though, because
Go for
it. I think the isolated incidents, as you go from start to finish of the 80 minutes of this movie, you're right. There's probably 100 that you could pull out and say, well, is there any logic to this whatsoever? And the answer is no.
No, there's not.
What I mean by does it make sense is not, is there logic to any of this? There's no logic to the plot of either of these movies. There's none whatsoever. But there is a narrative from start to finish of this movie where I understand the motives of everyone involved. Where, okay, there's this amusement park villain who needs more talent.
Is it what? Moron Mountain?
Moron Mountain. Danny DeVito is running this Moron Mountain, and he needs bigger attractions. So he sends his little minions to go zap up the craziest attractions they can find. Trap the Looney Tunes.
But why are they in the middle of the earth? That's another.
But you can't go logic based, because logic based makes no sense. But if you're following that, just that's the premise of the movie. Into, all right, they're trapping the Looney Tunes, and now we're gonna go steal powers from these people. Like, it follows. Yeah. And then you know what they're playing. When you get to the basketball, you know what they're playing for. Like, I'm watching that basketball game, being like, okay, if they lose, they're trapped forever. There's real stakes here. And when we get to the plot of the second movie, I had no fucking clue what was happening at all.
That's very true. And you mentioned that with the first one, like, it's only 80 minutes and it's kind of rushed. I felt that I understood the storyline and, like, the transition from scene to scene in the first one way better than I did.
It is cleaner. It's absolutely cleaner. I will definitely champion that for the original film. Is scene to scene is, while it is fast paced, this movie is very short and it's edited down. It's got a quick pace without a lot of time to stop and think or really explain anything. But scene to scene, it is very clean. It like Greg said, it's very clear. The motives, the plot line. It's simple. And it's kind of low stakes in a way. Obviously, there's a not low stakes element to being enslaved for the rest of your life. But in terms of, like, the movie as a whole, it's pretty simple. Right. And it's at the end of the day, they get Michael Jordan to play a basketball game with them. That's the whole movie. Yeah. And it's reduced down to 80 minutes. It's very simple.
And
whereas
to make a meta point, to make one meta point, it's almost a reflection of a basketball player's career in the fact that it's typically a better thing when you retire on the early side of things and leave people wanting more. Whereas people that play out their careers a little too long and lose their powers do not get remembered fondly by history. And I think there's something to be said about a 2-hour-long movie versus an 80-minute movie. And no one watches Space Jam and is like happy Space Jam ends. Like I would do more Space Jam from watching that movie. Like,
I look forward to watching it again. I had a lot of fun watching it the other night.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty universally accepted. I don't think people are going to feel the same way about the new one.
Okay. So Carter and Greg, do you guys have any other final thoughts on the original? Otherwise, if you had to rate it, what would you rate it? Either out of 5 or out of 10. What would you rate it?
Carter, I have one final thought before you go to your rating, if that's okay.
Can I do my final thought before we do the rating?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. The gear in the original one, way more fire than the second one.
Dude, yeah, the Toon Squad uniforms in the original.
Yeah, Goon Squad is also a dumb name.
Interesting. I think I disagree on the Toon Squad uniforms.
You like the original better or the?
I like the new ones better.
Oh, interesting.
The new ones are pretty sweet.
I feel like the old ones are a little plain, just white with a navy blue color.
Okay, but you also had the Space Jam Jordans with those. Like the Space Jam LeBrons are very.
The Space Jam Jordans are that makes it cool enough with
classic.
nostalgia. Yeah, you're right. But just like I'm talking as a jersey connoisseur, I don't want a Toon Squad jersey from '97. No, thank you.
I disagree with that one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure if Connor McKinney, if you're listening, I think Connor has an original Toon Squad jersey.
Oh, which Toon Squad player jersey are you getting? If you're getting
he definitely has Bugs.
I think he has Bugs.
Isn't the move definitely to get Lola though? Like if you're objectively
no, you get Bugs and then you find a girl to get Lola and then you guys go to Halloween together.
Look at that. The move.
There you go. All right. My final note on Space Jam was that there was one moment more than anything else in that movie that was absolutely unbelievable. Like I could not process that it was happening. And I'll give either one of you a free night of drinks the next time I see you if you can tell me what it is.
A scene that you could not believe was happening.
There's just one moment in that movie that does not stand up as something that would ever happen, ever. The most unbelievable part of that movie.
Does it have to do with the scene of them breaking in to get his shorts back?
No.
Does it have to do with something at Michael Jordan's house? Something with his house?
No. At least I don't think so.
His house was kind of small in that movie.
That's something that always stands out to me. Is like, that's not Michael Jordan's house. The dude's a billionaire. And the fact that I was wondering if you were thinking about when the Looney Tunes show up and the kids are like, "Oh, Dad's playing a basketball game for the universe." Where's my dad?
Here's his bag.
Where's my dad? Like,
that's good too. My answer is
go ahead. I'm not sure.
My answer is that at the end of the movie, they're back in the open, or they're leaving the gym where they've just won the game.
Okay.
And they need to package up the basketball that now has the talent in the ball. And Michael Jordan's holding onto this ball that is filled with Muggsy Bogues, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, the other two's talents. He's holding onto it. Michael Jordan would not willingly bring their talents back to his competition.
That's
Are
true.
you kidding me?
That's a great
Michael Jordan is zapping that shit up ASAP and using it to fuel him
Greg,
7 more
he's a
championships.
baseball player. I'm a baseball player.
That just like it, man, it was almost, that was the moment where I'm like, they're doing too much to cater to the Michael Jordan is a good person narrative, because the real MJ is sucking that shit up ASAP and using it to win 5 more titles and dancing on Charles Barkley's grave.
See, you have such a basketball mind that I wouldn't even thought of that. But now that you pointed out, that is an interesting observation, especially after watching the Last Dance documentary. I think you're right. He would have never done that. All right. Speaking of Michael Jordan and acting and being in a movie, before we get into Space Jam 2, so we kind of already touched on it, MJ versus LeBron. Obviously, this has been the debate since LeBron came into the league. And before we get into his sequel to his, colleague or his idol or the guy overshadowing his whole career, I like LeBron. Okay, I will put that out there. I'm not as big a basketball guy as you guys are. I've always had a ton of respect for LeBron. I've always respected him for what he does in terms of a person, whether you like him on the court or what. Off the court, the guy is one of the most respectable athletes in terms of, being on a pedestal since he was like 16, 17 years old. And to have never done anything wrong. Like, how many 15, 16, 17-year-old athletes who are on that big a pedestal from that time into the professional career who don't do something stupid? I mean, maybe he said things you don't agree with. Maybe you don't like the way he plays. Maybe you don't like his decision making in terms of the team he goes to. But the dude, in terms of his personal life and in terms of a leader and like a guy to look up to for kids, there's no better role model. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't think there's any better role model. MJ doesn't quite have that. We already talked about the gambling and some of the issues he's had. He's a role model in terms of what he achieved, but he has had some personal things off the court. LeBron hasn't had any of that. Now, we're not going to sit here and judge them on those things. I know you guys would probably like to get into the basketball debate, the online Twitter debate that's raged for years now. I can't believe how many times I see viral tweets about comparing LeBron and MJ. But whether you guys want to get into that or not, I thought we should talk about the acting. So I agree with Carter. I saw Trainwreck. I'm not a huge on the movie as a whole. I think it's all right. I think it's a fine movie. I'm not a huge fan of Amy Schumer. I'm just going to put that out there. But LeBron's really good in that movie. And the reason I think he's really good in that movie and he stinks in this movie is because that movie, I don't think he had to try very hard. While he's playing himself in both these movies, Trainwreck is a straightforward comedy, and his character, his fictional version of himself in the movie, is like super lighthearted. Like, I think if I remember correctly, his character is just a friend of Bill Hader's character in the movie. And like every scene he's in, it's like just banter. And it's just super fun and lighthearted. And he holds his own in terms of like a comedic actor. Space Jam 2, there's a lot of things we're going to talk about with Space Jam 2 here. But one thing that drove me nuts in this movie is he's so serious. I think the entire film, this is LeBron's face. He's always like so serious. I'm like, you got to lighten up. Like, that's one big difference between these two movies is Space Jam, while there's like some dark stuff in it, like dark themes, like the slavery shit, you're like, okay. In terms of how everything is executed, it's always very lighthearted and silly and goofy. Space Jam 2 is so serious. And the biggest reason why is they add in this whole family thing. This whole thing with his family and his son. Like, that's the big thread through this new movie, is that it's not just a basketball game for their lives. He now has this like emotional dynamic with his son and his family, and it's kind of boring. I don't know about you guys. So what were your overall thoughts on this movie? If you want to go ahead, Carter.
I think the dad, just speaking to the dad part for me, I was like, they're like forcing LeBron to act like he's not like a dad, forcing him to be a dad that's like too hard on his kids, which he like obviously isn't. Like, he's very open about his family life and what he is as a father. And like, he's all been on the record saying all these types of things about how he doesn't care what his kids do. They can do whatever they want. But the first scene in the movie is him coming out there like, what are y'all doing? Are y'all outside in our backyard at our home messing around? Like, does that even sound like something he would do? It's just that part, just like him being a hard ass, hard on dad. I was like, that's just not him. And it looked forced. And it was.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, the entire premise of the movie was LeBron James is a bad father trying to learn to be a good father. That's like, I couldn't help but wonder how LeBron ever signed off on that being the plot of this movie.
You know what I think it is? I think it's like he's trying to reaffirm his ego, because that's like something I saw throughout this whole movie. And again, I like LeBron a lot, but how often, even when he's not in the scene, are other characters just stroking his ego? Oh, he's the king. He's the king, the greatest player.
Was an absolute ego trip. Even the intro to it was literally just a LeBron highlight tape of what he's done in basketball, what he's done off the court. And I was like, okay, but that set the tone for the movie. I was like, okay, I see what this movie's going to be.
They do have that in the original, but I will say in this one, there's more. The original, it's not quite as extensive for MJ, like the opening credit scroll with, some of his accomplishments. But like you said, it's like everything. And I think another big difference between these two, and it's something, Greg, you brought up, is Michael was going through a lot of turmoil, and he had a lot of shit going on where people were like, it wasn't like he got knocked off his pedestal, but it's like he'd been nudged, right? He was kind of on a slump in terms of like how he was being perceived publicly. LeBron has always had haters or people who don't like him because of how he plays or things he says, but he's well liked, I think, overall. I think a lot of people, like I mentioned, understand he helps the community. He's a good father. He has a great family core and family dynamic. So for them, like you said, Greg, to shoehorn in this bad father plot line, just take that out. Just take that whole thing out. It didn't even need to be in the movie. This movie was 30 minutes longer than the original. Did you guys notice that or not?
Oh yeah.
30 minutes longer.
I can't believe it's only 30. I thought it would be 40.
It was like 20. I literally looked. It was like when the credits rolled, it was about 25 or 26 extra minutes.
It felt twice as long to me, but
it was a slog.
To go back to the LeBron thing, though, like comparing it to, I guess, what MJ would have used motivation-wise for why he would agree to even do Space Jam, or what he's trying to set up as an outcome of Space Jam. To me, the Michael Jordan piece of that was paint himself as a good person, get a little good PR, and then also set him up for this crazy successful return to basketball, which like it built a lot of momentum into like, okay, MJ's back. Yeah. That's exciting.
With
LeBron, the only thing that I can justify in my head of why he would even sign up for this plot and to have it be bad father twisted into like the big resolution here is, oh, he loves his family and he's a good dad and it's all about fun now, is like painting LeBron as this guy who's just a workaholic, basketball obsessive, the greatest work ethic of any player ever, who's now entered into the end of his career and has decided, it's really just about the love of people and moving on. And like, if this is LeBron taking that step in his career, which maybe it is, because I mean, the Lakers lost in the first round this year, and who knows, he might be back next year. He might not, but like, there's not going to be, I don't think, a big LeBron still chasing to be the greatest thing that could have been a plot of Space Jam 2, when in reality, it's kind of just like, oh yeah, like I need to change my priorities now, is what I took out of it. And it's baffling to me because that's not at all who LeBron is. And I don't even understand why he would want to publicly paint himself that way.
And even on top of that, G, just to kind of add to the painting himself thing, maybe this is just me, but why was he trying to paint himself also as like the most fundamental basketball player of all time?
Yeah.
He's like fundamentals. I'm like, that's just, what are you talking? Like, what, like, who was the big fundamental? Tim Duncan? Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
What is the whole fundamental thing too? I was just like, that's just kind of an odd way to paint yourself.
Couldn't they have very easily, I don't know what the deal would have been with like actually casting his real family, but like you said.
Well, they didn't for MJ. They didn't for MJ either.
Because his kids don't like him. Bron's kids like him.
Did they even have fake? There really wasn't like a family subplot with MJ though, right?
No.
Like there were moments.
And that was one of the funniest things, like going back to the original, like in terms of explanation, is his family, like him just missing, is kind of glossed over, which is pretty hilarious. I mean, it's just like they just accept that he's gone and playing this basketball game, but they don't spend a lot of time on it, which is what makes the original work so well.
Yeah,
is the editing is so tight, and they don't have any subplots. There's no subplots. It's literally the basketball game. That's it.
Shit. So now that you even say that, it's wild that Jordan even agreed to doing a missing father subplot. Literally after that's exactly what happened to his dad.
Think of that. Oh,
that's wild.
So,
but they do have his dad. They do have like a very respectful cameo of a guy playing his dad at the beginning, so yeah, I'm sure he had some doing with that. But.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a missed opportunity though. Like, I don't blame Space Jam 2 for going the family route, because I think like the concept of Space Jam, but with like some actually poignant, powerful like meaning behind it, is a good concept. Like, I think they could have executed that, but like, couldn't they have very easily just like cast LeBron's real family, and instead of making LeBron be a bad father, like, why couldn't LeBron's real kid, why couldn't Bryce have just been kidnapped? And LeBron, the loving father, needs to go save his son. Like, that's a way better movie to me than like LeBron learning that it's all about what my son really likes to do. Like, have you guys seen the movie Hook with Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook and Robin Williams as Peter Pan? You guys ever seen Hook it's like 1991? I've heard of it. Haven't seen
Vince,
it.
I didn't get my movie background, but I'm a bad movie watcher unless I go watch it in theaters. Like, I need my popcorn.
Oh, man.
Popcorn is what I need, and my overpriced drink and overpriced popcorn. I need to be in the theater.
Hey, man,
watch movies.
little side note. Last week I went and saw Fast and Furious 9 at NCG
I saw that too.
with a big thing of popcorn, laughing my ass off at all the family shit and the Coronas and everything.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Great.
shout out to getting back into the movie theaters. It's great. But Hook has a plot line. I don't know if they ripped this off blatantly, but if you've never seen the movie Hook, it's Peter Pan grown up. Robin Williams plays Peter Pan as a grown man. He forgets he's Peter Pan. His son gets kidnapped by Hook, and Hook like brainwashes him against his dad, like, and kidnaps him and makes him like try to be like his own son. And I felt like that was almost like what they did here. Like, they stole that plot element because, like, we haven't even mentioned yet the villain of this movie is Don Cheadle, and he is just having a great time. Don Cheadle's like, give me a check. I'm going to ham it up and have a great time being this over-the-top villain.
Rhythm.
Yeah, this horrible, that name. Like, it's supposed to be algorithm. Yeah, and they just, yeah. Oh, man, it's great. But Don Cheadle's having a great time, man. He's just, give me my money. I'm going to have fun. But his character is like basically trying to brainwash his son against him. And I felt like if anyone's watching or listening and seen Hook, maybe you get the same vibes as me, but I'm watching this. I'm like, did they just rip off Hook? Like, this is like the same thing they did in that movie. But if you guys haven't seen it, then you don't know. But to me, that whole plot line is just what dragged this movie down. I feel like if they just would have gone back to the original, it would have still just been a cheap cash grab, but I think it would have been more fun. You know, because at the end of the day, it's a cheap cash grab.
I got a thing that I think dragged the movie down that we just mentioned briefly, but we need to spend a lot more time on. Algae Rhythm is one of the worst characters in a movie ever. I'll go there. What is Algae Rhythm's motivation? What's he doing?
He like says he wants to be like known worldwide, but all he's doing if they win the game is everyone stays in the server or wherever the fuck they're at. So what is Algae Rhythm really trying to do here?
What does Algae Rhythm get if it goes well or poorly for him? What's he trying to do?
Company.
I honestly don't know.
Right, and the way he was talking, he could hack anything in the movie. Like, why the hell are you worried about kidnapping him and playing basketball? You just go through his webcam. That's what you really want to do. Like,
it's a far thinner, flaky character motivation. And yeah, like as you try to talk about, it just doesn't make sense. Opposed to the guy who Danny DeVito's character, I can't remember the character's name, but the leader of the Monstars in the original, who's like, okay, you get it. He's just this wealthy amusement park owner, wants money, needs a new attraction. Like, yeah, okay, makes sense, I guess. Whereas this one, yeah, he's literally just a computer. So he wants company. He wants people stuck in this computer with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the Pete guy way more than Algorithm or Algae Rhythm, whatever his name was. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, his little version of Siri, basically.
Yeah, and it's just like even in the first one, like Danny DeVito's like this ugly, like cigar smoking, like just nasty person. Then you just have like clean cut Don Cheadle, who's just like in a server and just like wants to be known. Like, just,
also, Danny DeVito is always better than no Danny DeVito. So like, we should have just had Danny DeVito reprise.
They should have just brought him back.
Villain. Yeah,
they should have.
Okay, that's another thing. Since we just brought this up, what did you guys think about the fact that they kind of acknowledge but don't acknowledge that this is a sequel in the movie? Like, there's a moment when Bugs Bunny like looks right in the camera and goes, "This seems kind of familiar."
See, I enjoyed that part of the movie, to be honest.
Okay, you like that they like kind of
I like the fake like saving a basketball player's career. I wonder how that's been done before. Like,
but I wish they would have kept that, because then later on during the game they full on acknowledge it and go, when Daffy Duck's like, I haven't seen Michael in 25 years, so I don't know what he looks like.
Right.
And he picks Michael B. Jordan out of the crowd. I thought I hadn't read anything about this. I was like, no, they're not really bringing MJ into this movie, because I didn't know if they like kept the cameo under wraps. And then I'm like, okay, it's Michael B. Jordan. That's pretty funny. That scene was pretty funny. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that reminds me of the meta moment you mentioned with Bill Murray. Like, it's different, but like the poking fun at the concept of the movie or the fact that it's a sequel. I like that. That's fun. And the Michael Jordan thing, like I was on the edge of my seat in that moment. And yes, I
was like,
doubted
no,
it.
I literally like out loud was like, no way. I'm like, did they really bring him back for this?
Yeah, and that was good. Shout out Michael B. Jordan too. Like I love that he signed up for that.
He's a great actor. I love Michael B. Jordan. He's great. That dude can do no wrong. I love every movie he's in. But let's see what else we got to talk about here with this movie before we wrap things up.
Other way you could have fixed it. Sorry, Vince. Other way we just could have solved the movie. Make MJ be the bad guy. Make MJ and LeBron have.
Okay, that would have been far more entertaining. That's a great idea.
Also, while we're on the topic of halftime scenes, the Space Jam original halftime scene was way more iconic than the second one. Literally, him just like get loony. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I love the part about Mike's secret stuff and like wondering what was in the secret stuff.
Dude,
and like they're filling up the bottle with the soap. That's not the secret stuff. It's just that's great stuff.
That goes back to like adult content. It's like they're giving the Looney Tunes steroids, like secret stuff. It's like, it's great. I love that too. I agree with you. That halftime scene, the original, was far better than the new one. I didn't think it was nearly as good. But I got to go back to something. Carter, you brought this up really early on. The original has iconic music, like, but they're all songs that like. To me, I like imagine independently of the film, other than the Space Jam theme song. Like I can hear them independently of the film. This film, like I think all the music in the Space Jam sequel, it sounded like was made for the movie, and it's like, it sounds like they tried to make it as close to what's popular as possible, and it just all blends together. It's all like overproduced, like super poppy, like techno, like even when they do hip hop stuff, when they go into rap music, it's super overproduced and like super like dance music, like in terms of like 2021, you know, like I don't know, like a Dua Lipa or Charlie XCX in that kind of vein, you know, and it's just like, okay, like it just felt more lowest common denominator than the original to me.
Yeah, the best song on there was Porky's Freestyle. Honestly, like
that whole scene was great.
I actually enjoyed that scene.
That scene made me laugh.
I did. I'm sorry, G, but no,
that is one of my notes.
Just the rapping, not the the background, like LeBron, like in the background talking about like I didn't like all that.
Greg, if it makes you feel better, I love that scene in a so bad it's good kind of way. Like I was laughing like I was entertained. Like I'm like, this is hilarious.
I respect the concept of so bad it's good, but that was so bad it was so bad. Like that was by far my least favorite moment of the movie.
You know what I say? That's all, folks.
I had a lot of moments I didn't like in the movie. But the only good part of that moment was when actual Ernie Johnson followed up the rap by saying he was spitting hot fire. I did laugh audibly at that moment just because Ernie Johnson doing anything hip hop related is funny, but I was infuriated that they had the gall to actually have Porky Pig get a rap feature.
But that whole moment to me is like a microcosm of this movie. It's so on the nose. It's so random.
It makes no sense. It's on the nose, but like again, it makes no sense. And we said the first Space Jam doesn't make sense, but it also did. Like you could turn your head and follow the storyline. There's no reason Porky Pig should be rapping at halftime.
It was also semi-real basketball in the first one.
Yeah,
legit was.
We didn't mention that yet.
Was not basketball.
Like, yeah,
let's talk about that. Game. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, like, so they have his son makes this basketball video game that like to me seems like reminiscent of like NBA Street. What was that game called? Like
NBA Street Volume 2 or
yes.
NBA Jam type.
Yes. NBA Ballers, another one.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Like a modern version of those games, but like for, you know, the phone crowd because he's making it like on your cell phone or whatever. And I thought that was so stupid. I don't know about you guys, but like when the game is being played and they're like, "Oh, we got style points," I'm like,
"Style points."
All right,
I hated style points. I hated cheat code when they took the ball out of the hoop. Like then a middle of a hip hop round, and they had it was just.
I checked out. I got bored. I'm like, this is It's boring. I'm
right, like even the graphic of like the scoreboard running up in the first one was great. I just hated the fact that all of a sudden they just put up 1,000 points.
That's a great visual, like
visual, those numbers flipping.
And but then it goes little one-sided, isn't it? Is like then they flip that up. Like that's great. Like stuff like that. Like it's a little detail from the first one that I really liked, and this one didn't have things like that in general. But like the whole basketball scene, and then we haven't mentioned this yet. None of us have even mentioned this, and I had it in my notes. This movie is one giant smoke up my ass if I'm a Warner Brothers executive. Like they're just blowing smoke up their ass. It's everything they own. That's the other thing is the original Space Jam, while it had a ton of product placement, like there's the one scene in the original where Newman walks in, or Wayne Knight walks into the hotel room and goes, "Get your Nikes on, grab your Wheaties and your Gatorade. We'll go get McDonald's Big Mac." Like it's like you put your head in your hand, like, okay, they all paid you, obviously, but like this movie isn't the cheap product placement. It's like Warner Brothers going, "This is everything we've made ever in a movie. We're gonna all put it in this movie," and it's so distracting. I don't know if you guys saw the movie Ready Player One that came out a few years ago. That Steven Spielberg.
I've seen that.
So Ready Player One, it's all right. I like that movie. It's not a great movie, but I like it. They do something similar, but it makes sense in that movie because it's like a video game. The whole concept is like a virtual reality video game where you go in and they have all these characters from different movies and stuff that you can play and be a part of in the game. Whereas this, it's just like they're in their server and it's just like, it's not earned. It's just, here is all of our properties. And remember this?
Every Looney Tune is in a different, property of theirs. I'm just like, I thought that the Looney Tunes like left Toonville, Toontown, whatever, to go live a better life. And now like Lola Bunny's trying to be like an Amazon warrior.
Yeah.
Like what's going on here?
Oh, okay. And I'm glad you brought that up. That is something that baffled me. All of the worlds that they go to, what kid is going to be watching that? Little kid. They have Game of Thrones. They have Mad Max. What little kids are watching Mad Max? Help me out here. What were some of the other worlds they went to?
Superman, or what was it? DC?
Oh, they went to the 90s. It was the 90s DC Superman and Batman world. Like, I know the kids know Batman and Superman, but like, they have all these adult. They have the Matrix. They have the Matrix.
I was about to say the Matrix with the old lady.
Yeah,
like
they have the Matrix. Like, what?
No kids movies.
I'm like, I'm sorry, these are not kids properties. Like, I would get like they had Harry Potter in there, and they have the DC stuff, but there's so many adult properties. I know, Greg, I think you liked my tweet. There was a viral tweet going around of someone getting upset with people getting upset with this movie, people criticizing this. It's a kid's movie. It's not for you. I'm like, why are the Clockwork Orange characters, which I literally have a tattoo on my arm of a Clockwork Orange, like, why are those an R-rated movie from the 1970s in this movie? Why?
Yeah, it made no sense.
Because they own it. Because they own it. That's why.
I hated all of the excess characters being in it at all. I hated it. I will say my wife, who watched it with me on the couch, that was her favorite part of the movie, was just like spouting out, "Oh, there's that person."
But it's because you like those things, not because it's a good movie.
Yeah,
I like Rick and Morty. Too. I did think the scene with Tasmanian Devil being brought back from Rick and Morty was kind of funny. Like, we were running experiments on this weird thing, have him back. Like, that's kind of funny.
But while we're speaking about other parts of the movies, one of my parts that I thought was great about the first movie was at the actual game, they had like other Looney Tunes cheering on the other Looney Tunes.
Yes.
And like they had like the bad guys, like people from Moron Mountain, cheering for the other team. On this one, all of a sudden everyone looks at their phone and just gets sucked into the game. And then they just got like random like King Kong in there just pulling up to the game. Just like
And the Iron Giant, which again is like, what kid knows the Iron Giant? Like, we all grew up in the 90s, so we're like aware. Even if you haven't seen the Iron Giant, like 90s kids are aware, like that was a big animated film. But like, what kid knows what that is? Or King Kong? What? I mean, I guess Godzilla versus Kong just came out, but still, that to me was like the biggest eye roll of the movie. I know there was a few other things we've talked about that was like, okay, but like the IP just museum or zoo, it was like a zoo. They're just showing off all of their IPs that they own throughout the movie. It's like, I was like, all right, we get it. This is all the stuff you own. Like, it's not really earned. You're just like, we're in our Warner Brothers studio and we're in our server. Here's everything we own. But I don't know.
Vincent,
that was
while we're on the topic of product placement, I feel obligated to say that my favorite part of watching Space Jam 2 was drinking my large drink from Chick-fil-A while eating my Kodiak cakes, wearing my 199.com apparel, and talking about it in the wonderful Spotify Green Room app.
Look at you, just rattling off all the products you got there. I just got a bunch of Apple products and a bottle of 19 Crime, so I can't really. I don't have anything that great to show off.
Also, I actually want to ask you guys a question too about the second one. They made like note of that clock running out at the start, and then all of a sudden it just hit 0. Like they didn't reference that at all. They're like, okay, we got to get this done before it hits 0.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like it just goes off. They didn't have like practice or like I think they hit like 2 minutes into practice or something like that. And all of a sudden, oh, there it goes. It goes off. I'm like,
see, and that gets me to another issue with this movie that I don't have an issue with in the first one. I kind of talked about is they don't explain nothing's over explained in the first one. Things just happen and move along. This movie, like stuff like that, like they're trying to explain stuff. Like in the first one, like practice time or like leading up to the game, it just kind of happens. But in this one, they like squeeze in stuff like that where they're trying to explain how things happen. I'm like, you don't need to explain it. No one cares. It's a movie with the Looney Tunes and one of the most famous basketball players in the world. Playing a game for their lives. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Like, again, the original is not really a great movie by, traditional movie standards, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's fun and entertaining. This one, a lot of times I was bored and I'm like, and again, and I'll put it out there for anyone who's going to criticize me. I know this movie's not made for us. All right. I know someone's going to be like, it's made for kids. I get it. Doesn't mean it's exempt from criticism. Doesn't mean you can't talk about it.
I kind of want to watch it with like my younger cousin and like know what he thinks. Like maybe like show him Space Jam and then show him like the second one. Because the second one, I'll be honest, and I'm a LeBron stan. I love LeBron. Like I'll go on and on about my love for LeBron James.
I love LeBron James too.
But that Space Jam 2 was kind of ass, man. Like the whole concept of the video game, like him going in and like it's just not LeBron. And I just didn't like it. Like LeBron's son makes a video game and he comes in and says, that's not impressive. Can you do a dribble step back? Like it's like the whole shut up and dribble thing comes into play. Like it's just it's all like it pissed me off watching.
Hot take. You're gonna do a cheap cash grab. Why not just literally do the same thing?
I would have loved to see that, except oh my god.
And do what
Twitter would have been unbearable if Bron would have just copied the first one.
I mean, he basically did anyway. Think about Space Jam as a whole. This is another thing that's been in my head that I can't get out of my head. Space Jam as a whole is such a unique thing. Like, just think about it from like its conception in 1996. What a weirdly unique 90s idea. And then to try and come back to it with a guy who for his entire career has been living in the shadow of that guy who was in that original idea. Let's just make a sequel to that movie that he was in. It's already a stupid cash grab. Like you understand what they're doing. Like they're just trying to, and this is the other reason that I get pissed about the people getting upset about criticizing a kids movie. Who is this movie made for? Like, obviously the kids are going to go see it, but you don't think you're pulling in all the millennials who grew up with this movie?
No.
Why not just do the same thing over again, but do what Greg said? I like what you said, Greg. Have MJ come back. I don't think he would have came back. They maybe asked him. You probably couldn't have paid that guy enough money because he has all the money in the world. But if they could have got him to come back, animate him. Just get his permission to use his likeness and animate him. Have him come back and just the same movie, but like you said, he's the villain or something. I don't understand. They have so many things jammed into this movie, extra stuff that to me was just not needed.
I think there's a ton of ways they could have fixed this movie or made a better version of this movie just by simplifying things and tweaking the plot to make it more straightforward. I don't know. I even if you're going to go the video game route, there's a way to flip that without making... Newsflash,
they shouldn't have gone the video game route at all. That's exactly... Literally, just do it like it's his first year with the Lakers. He's coming in. He's finally coming in with the Lakers, and he gets his powers taken away, and he sucks for the Lakers.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Easy.
That's a good idea.
That is nice.
I think there's a lot of simpler ideas like that they could have done. They made this way too complicated. They tried to jam too much stuff in. But I got you guys here for almost an hour now, so I want to try to wind things down because I feel like we could keep ranting. Do you guys have any final thoughts on this movie or either movie? And then I wanted to get your rating on the first one. We didn't do that yet, so let's get some final thoughts, and then we can try and rate these movies.
Car, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I didn't like Space Jam 2, to be honest with you, and I'm disappointed I didn't like it. It just wasn't good.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and I wasn't expecting it to be better than the first one, but I was expecting it to be a lot better than that. Like, I'll give the second one like a 2 out of 5, and I'll probably give the first one somewhere near like a 4.5.
You're going.
Oh, you got a high.
Yeah, out of 5.
I go out of 10. Lots of people go out of 5. You can do whatever you want.
Space Jam was like the first movie I watched.
No, he's not with your rating. He's arguing with what you're going out of. But I'm defending you, Carter. You can do whatever you want, man.
Out of 10, I can do that.
Yeah. Who goes on a scale of 5? Who are you?
If I scale it, I'll scale it to 10 just for you. The first one gets a 4 out of 10, and the second one gets a 9 out of 10. Like, what? That's just simple fractions.
I feel way better about that. I feel because if it's just out of 5, like, so many different things could be a 4. I don't know if 4 means very good, if it means great, if it just means all right. Like,
hey man, Roger Ebert, one of the most famous film critics ever, went out of 4. He was on a 4-star.
Yeah. Also, Roger Ebert went out of his own scale because it's his own scale. So why don't you just focus on your scale and rate it yourself? Why are you worried about my scale?
All right, you're right. Fine. Are you done? Did you give your final thoughts with your ratings?
Yes.
Okay. I have 2 final thoughts about Space Jam 2. The first one is that I was really hoping and kind of waiting for there to be a not 1, not 2, not 3 reference at some point. I thought that was a missed opportunity for LeBron to poke some fun at himself there. And my final criticism of this movie, almost like my final thought from the first movie, is that the thing I hated the most decision-wise in Space Jam 2 was that down the stretch, in a 1-possession game, the villain team played Algae Rhythm over Damian Lillard's Monster.
No, Damian Lillard was old.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, remember Granny hit him with the age 1,000 years, and he became.
That's right. He
became Chris Paul.
Yeah, wasn't. I hope Chris Paul sees this. Wasn't that like some cheat code? Yeah, he's right. There was like some cheat code or some power up. Also,
Algae Rhythm was the best player in the game at that point. He literally knew everything. He was Bron.
You're loving Algae Rhythm. Cart's a big fan of Algae Rhythm.
I'm starting to really come around with Algae Rhythm.
Algae Rhythm.
Okay, well, I stand corrected, Carter. Thank you for being a better movie analyst than I am. I appreciate that. That went right over my head. I'm going to give Space Jam 1 an 8 out of 10, which I like it. I would watch Space Jam anytime you want. It's a great movie. Space Jam 2, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. I didn't hate it as much as you guys did. I think it's an objectively awful movie, and I'm not going to see it for a long time. But, like, I'm not mad at it. I'm not angry that it happened. I just wish it would have been a little better.
Yeah, I'm not watching it again unless we're coming back on this podcast to talk about it.
I will not bring you back on to talk about Space Jam 2. If I get you guys back, we're talking about something else. I would talk about Space Jam again. Space Jam's a lot of fun.
Space Jam 3, Giannis versus the world 20 years from now.
If they do another one, they just redo the original. It's already at that point a cheap cash grab. Just do it again. Just do the same thing. Who cares? So for me, Space Jam, the original, I'm a little bit more critical, but I do have a lot of fun watching it. I own it. I bought it, so I'll be rewatching it. I give it like a 6.5 out of 10. I enjoy it. I don't think it's great, but I think it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of so bad it's good stuff in it. I really didn't like this new one. I got to be honest. I've watched, I think, like 30 something. I'm a big movie nerd, obviously, as you guys know. So I keep a list on an app called Letterboxd where you rate movies. And of the 30 something movies I think I've seen in 2021, it's second to last. Can't stand it.
What was last? I gotta
ask. Last is so forgettable. I can't even think off the top of my head what it was.
I need to access this list.
Tell you right now. Oh, Willy's Wonderland, that new stupid Five Nights at Freddy's movie with Nick Cage, where he doesn't talk and he kills a bunch of Chuck E. Cheese characters. It's on like Hulu or something. It's bad. I didn't like it.
Sounds bad.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. They wasted Nick Cage. I give this like a 3 out of 10. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not a 1. It's not close to being the worst thing, like a 2. To me, it's just not good. It's like a 3. To me, it's one of the worst things you can be, and that's pretty boring. I thought it was pretty boring. I'll be honest. I wasn't very entertained. The first one entertains me because there's so much stuff in it. I'm like, I can't believe this is in a kid's movie. When I watched the original, I'm like, this is great. I can't wait to show my son when he's old enough. 16 months old. He doesn't know what the hell's going on, so he can't watch it yet, but he can't stay still for more than a few minutes. So
yeah, well, it's kid time for me. I'm definitely showing him Space Jam 1.
Man.
I'll just show him Brian highlights.
show him Trainwreck over this movie. If you want to show him LeBron acting, show him Trainwreck.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, with that, we'll wrap things up here. Before I exit us out, I would like you guys to go ahead and shamelessly plug. Go ahead, shamelessly plug. It's your.
You don't want me to shamelessly plug because I'll mess it up. So, G, you do it.
I kind of feel like I refuse to shamelessly plug ourselves on such a prestigious show that we've appeared on.
I'm giving you the platform.
I mean, Carter's really funny. He's great. He's entertaining. You can watch more of him. Sleepers Media YouTube channel. He carries me to greatness. And we do a lot of Michigan State basketball talk. So if you're a Michigander out there, check us out.
I can vouch for that. These guys
that's a stamp of approval that we need. But since G doesn't want to do everything, Sleepers Media on YouTube, Sleepers Media on TikTok, also Twitter, Instagram, we're on it all. We got a lot of stuff coming up. We're kind of branching out from Michigan State players as well. So a lot of stuff on the horizon.
I wasn't aware of that.
Content, even outside of basketball. One of our videos, we just did a drunk scout where we drank and scouted Kate Cunningham. So
I'm halfway through. I got to finish that one. I was having a lot of fun watching.
Oh, wait till you get to the end of it. You're gonna love seeing Greg.
Oh man, I haven't got to the end yet because I usually listen and watch when I'm like trying to work around the house, like do stuff, or I'm in my car. So like I'll listen while I'm doing something. And I got to finish that one.
Oh yeah, just wait. It's good stuff. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming, and I appreciate you having us on, man, for real.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining me, guys. Appreciate you having some time here on a, Wednesday night? I lose track of the days. Wednesday night, talking about Space Jam 2. I don't know when I'll have you guys back on because I don't know any other basketball movies coming out. Maybe I get you on for something else. We'll have to talk. We'll text. We'll figure something out. But I'd love to have you guys back on. Well, all right, guys. Again, appreciate having you on. If you were listening, go watch the original Space Jam. I think it's on Hulu. Got the Bucks. Giannis doing big things out here. He's got lots of support out here. I'm not a big NBA guy, so I just follow the updates. I don't watch it like these guys do. But yeah, hope you like Space Jam 1, Space Jam 2. I don't know. Check it out. It's on HBO Max. It's in theaters right now. As Carter and I said, seeing Fast and Furious 9. I'd recommend go see that. If you want to see a big blockbuster cash grab sequel, that one knows exactly what it is. Go watch it.
Definitely go do that.
Greg supporting Chick-fil-A down there.
What are you doing? Greg's secret stuff.
Greg's secret stuff. I love it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Greg's secret stuff.
I'll ruin this for you. It's alcohol. So let's end it there.
Hey,
man, that's
I love the way Lola Bunny created Space Cart.
You gotta end this.
It's a little inside joke for our Drunk Scouts watchers. Vince, this was fun, man. Thank you.
Well, all right. We'll be back very soon with another episode. Hopefully we can get Carter and Greg and Sleepers Media back on again soon. In the meantime, I'll see you guys again with another episode very soon. I'm Vince, Film Nerd Podcast. Guests, Carter and Greg, Sleepers Media. Go watch some movies.